Thank you for being with us today. We're going to wait a few minutes for everyone to join, and we will get started very soon.
Hola, si usted se está uniendo a nosotros y solo habla español y necesita interpretación, hay una función en su cámara que dice Interpretation y tiene un símbolo como de un mapa mundi. Entonces, presione ese símbolo, seleccione el idioma español y luego si usted quiere que no se escuche el audio original, puede presionar Mute Original Video.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Disability Rights Tennessee's celebration of Disability Employment Awareness Month. I am Becky Allen. I use the pronouns she, her, and I am a white female with short brown hair and wearing a burgundy top. I'm joining you today from Knoxville. I've been a disability rights advocate with DRT for 11 years, and my work focuses on the Client Assistance Program, or CAP, that we'll be talking about with you this afternoon, as well as working in the voting rights area. Today, I am with two of my colleagues. Tricia Griggs and Nathan Walsh are hosting DRT's final webinar in our Disability Employment Awareness Month webinar series. We're discussing DRT's employment services, our CAP and PABSS programs. We'll be sharing what our organization can do to help Tennesseans with disabilities facing barriers to work. But before I introduce you to everyone, I need to do a little housekeeping. First of all, I want you to know this session is being recorded, so you'll be able to view it after today and share it with colleagues. The chat function is closed to participants today, but we will be posting links and information there for you to view during the session. If you have a question or need support, you can contact our staff through the Q&A function. We will be monitoring this throughout the session, but may not be able to answer every question. Thanks in advance for your patience. Also, we are providing Spanish and American language interpretation, as well as live captioning. If you need assistance accessing any of these, or you have other questions throughout the event, you can contact our staff through the Q&A function. And finally, I want to thank our sponsors and partners for supporting our 2021 employment events. Key collaborators like the Tennessee Department of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities and the Tennessee Department of Education, and advocate level partners such as AmeriGroup, the Tennessee Department of Human Services Vocational Rehabilitation Services, United Healthcare, and We Go Public Transit, and many more supporters make this event possible. Our sponsors and partners also supported our event in April, the Disability Employment Awareness Virtual Luncheon, and our October 14th webinar, Maximize Your Workforce. If you missed these events, you can find the video recordings on Disability Rights Tennessee's YouTube channel. We hope you'll check them out. Now, I'd like to introduce my colleagues who I will be presenting with today. First, I want to introduce Tricia Griggs. Tricia has been with DRT for 19 years and is a senior disability rights advocate. She specializes in our Client Assistance Program, or CAP, and the assistive technology area. Thanks for being here today, Tricia.
Thank you, Becky. I'm glad to be here.
Also with me today is Nathan Walsh. Nathan is staff attorney and has been with DRT for 5 years. His work with DRT focuses on employment and supported decision-making. Thanks for presenting with us, Nathan. All right, let's get into it. Our session today is to give you information about Disability Rights Tennessee and our employment services. This presentation is intended to provide you with some general information. Nothing in this presentation is legal advice. For advice regarding a specific situation, please contact your attorney. The topics we will be covering today include information about the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, the Client Assistance Program, or CAP, which Tricia will be sharing with you, our Protection and Advocacy for Beneficiaries of Social Security Program, PABSS, which Nathan will be sharing, and also our general Disability Rights Tennessee contact information. On this slide, the visual that you see is a series of books, hardbound books, all labeled with the word law on the spine, and there is a gavel in the foreground of the picture. And this is titled Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA. We're sharing this today because WIOA is the federal law which governs the Vocational Rehabilitation Program and also provides the basis for the services that DRT provides to VR customers during their journey to employment. I'm going to briefly share with you some of the major changes resulting from the implementation of WIOA when it was signed into law on July 22nd, 2014. Sharing with you the emphasis of WIOA. The Rehabilitation Act of 1973, as amended by WIOA, seeks to empower individuals with disabilities to maximize their employment, economic self-sufficiency, independence, and inclusion and integration into society. This is specific language that's found in the executive summary regarding the final regulations of WIOA, and it highlights and emphasizes these factors. The theme of National Disability Employment Awareness Month for 2021 is America's Recovery, Powered by Inclusion. And it reflects the importance of ensuring that people with disabilities have full access to employment and community involvement, specifically during the national recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. However, it's important to note that WIOA emphasizes the importance of all of these factors before, during, and after the pandemic. In sharing a little bit more information about how WIOA relates to the vocational rehabilitation in our program, on this slide, it indicates that the foundation of the VR program is the principle that individuals with disabilities, including those with the most significant disabilities, are capable of achieving high quality, competitive, integrated employment when provided with the necessary services and supports. WIOA added a new focus to VR's work to ensure individuals are provided the opportunity to obtain gainful employment in integrated settings in their communities. And VR has been charged to educate individuals employed in sub-minimum wage jobs or in sheltered workshops to help them learn about competitive integrated employment opportunities. The goal of the VR program is to help individuals with disabilities prepare for, secure, retain, and advance in or regain employment. You'll notice that advance is in bright red letters here. The VR program has long had the mission to help individuals to prepare for, secure, retain, or regain employment, but the concept of advancing in employment was added in WIOA. A few items of focus for WIOA. The focus on employment objectives is the first bullet point here. And this is really pointing out that the employment objective or the goal for the individual customer of VR, this goal should drive the individual services provided by VR. The second bullet focused on advanced employment opportunities rather than only entry-level employment. As noted before, advancing in employment is newly emphasized, and it includes specific guidance and discussion in the federal regulations regarding VR provision of advancement opportunities. And it's intended to help individuals maximize their employment rather than solely focusing on more entry-level jobs. Pre-employment transition services, or pre-ETS as we know it, was a major new focus under WIOA, and it really required a substantive funding shift in services of VR programs. And the purpose is to ensure that transition age youth are really prepared for the next steps after exiting secondary education. And the final point here is the transition of youth has also been added as a new core service for independent living programs, which also fall under WIOA. The independent living programs now have 5 core services that they are required to provide and have available as services. Now we're going to turn this over to Tricia, and she is going to be sharing information about the Client Assistance Program.
Hello, I am Tricia Griggs. I am a white female with shoulder-length strawberry blonde hair, blue eyes, and I am wearing a gray suit with a black under blouse, and I'm sitting on my couch in my living room. Okay, I'm going to talk to you about the Client Assistance Program, and we call it CAP for short. I know that a lot of people are grabbing onto that acronym, but so no, I'm talking about the Client Assistance Program when I say CAP. CAP helps individuals who have concerns or difficulties applying for or receiving rehabilitation services that were funded under the Rehabilitation Act. That includes the Vocational Rehabilitation Program and the Independent Living Programs, and any other program that's funded under that act. The history and implementation of CAP came about in 1984. CAP became a formula grant program when the Rehab Act of 1973 was amended. The governor of each state and U.S. territory is responsible for designating the agency that will operate the state's CAP. That agency must be independent, or the CAP itself actually must be independent of the agencies that provide the services. So VR cannot provide the CAP or the client assistance program, nor can the independent living centers. The role of CAP. We are here to help clients. We call them clients. VR calls them customers now. So I'm either going to refer to them as clients or individuals, myself. We help clients understand the services of the VR program. We advise clients of all their benefits available to them and the rights, well, their rights and responsibilities in connection to those benefits. So sometimes there are services that they are able to receive in their VR program they may not know, or maybe they think there's a service that they need that really doesn't apply to them, considering what program that they are striving to do with VR, what job they're trying to get. So it all has to relate. So we can help them understand all of that. We also assist them in the pursuit of legal and administrative and other remedies to ensure the protection of their rights. And we have to resolve disputes on the lowest level possible. So we always tell our clients to request an appeal when there is a denial of a service. We may or may not go to that appeal. There may be a lower level that we can resolve it on. But one thing is certain, they need to freeze that timeline so that if that appeal is necessary, they can get it. We also provide information about the CAP program across the state, whether it's to professionals or service providers, people with disabilities that either are in a rehab funded program or thinking about going into one. So we want them to know that we're here to assist them should they need us. And we also do policy work, which I'll go into a little bit more in a little bit. So we provide information and referral services to our clients. Everyone that calls the client assistance program, we have to provide them some level of service if we're serving them under this grant. So that can be done in information and referral if they need some resources to help them, or if they just need some technical assistance, like a policy explained, given some information where they can self-advocate for themselves, that kind of thing. We do individual case advocacy, where we actually have to advocate for the individual. So we do this through advisory and interpretational methods, which is basically explaining federal regulations and VR policy. We also help with the appeals process, as we talked about a moment ago. And we negotiate on behalf of the clients. So sometimes when we have to interact with VR or the IL program and work out whatever dispute is going on, a problem, and we're negotiating so we can provide that service. The levels of appeal that we provide, there are 3 levels in the VR program. There's an administrative informal review. And this, if we go to appeal, this is the one that we're going to assist with first, because we do have to resolve issues on the lowest level possible. The next level after that is mediation. Both parties have to agree for this one to be able to be provided. The advocates at CAP can help with both of those levels. The formal level of appeal is a fair hearing, and that would be referred over to our legal department, and they would make the decision if they had the resources to represent that individual in a fair hearing. There's also legal services and judicial court actions, which means we can take an individual's case to federal court if it's that egregious and we need to. I have never seen that. since I've been working here. But one thing that this does say is we cannot provide, or we cannot file class action lawsuits under this grant. Okay, carrying on with our scope, we also provide systems advocacy. We advise state or other agencies of identified problem areas in the delivery of rehab services and suggest methods of improving the agency performance. An example of this might be if we see a program that's being provided in one part of the state and none of the others, we're going to bring that to VR's attention because it has to be uniform across the state. There could be just some problems with procedures. It's something as simple as that that's affecting clients get what they need to be successful, and we'll bring that to their attention as well. So whatever we're seeing in the field, we let them know so they know if they need to provide their staff with training or if there is some sort of policy that needs to be changed. We review and comment on regulations and policies and procedures. So if VR knows that they're going to change one of their policies, they will put that out for public comment. We will make public comments on that. We always do written. And if they hold public hearings, we always attend in person and provide those comments. We also review and comment on state plans of VR program and of the independent living program. Whenever they do their state plans, and in VR's case, it's a unified state plan, but when those comments are open, we provide comments on each time that they do that. We serve on the SRC of Tennessee, which is the State Rehabilitation Council. This is a collaborative partnership with VR. Everyone on it, there's representatives from VR, there's representatives from the business community, from the clients themselves, the VR customers, from the advocates. And we serve on this. It's in the federal regulations that CAP has a designee, a member on that council. And so we all take turns doing it. Either the CAP director, who is the DRT executive director, or her designee will serve. And just about all of us have had a chance at that now. One of us is in on his first term. And yes, Becky and I have already served of the current staff. Okay, we also, I apologize, I got ahead of myself. So who is eligible for the CAP services? The applicants of the VR program and of the independent living programs are eligible for our services. They may be in the application process, and maybe they feel that they need help with that process. So for whatever reason, they may come to us for help getting through that. We can help with the final determination of eligibility and ineligibility, service determination. If they are denied, we can look at why, and we can see if there's anything after talking with the individual that they can submit to VR to help them out. If they are eligible and need help with the next stage, which is developing their IPE, identifying their employment goal, things like that. If they just need some advocacy in that, we can help. Okay. So we also work with the clients, as I said, who are eligible for the services if they're receiving those services. Sometimes things come up, and while they're doing this, sometimes a policy might change, or there's some change in the person's program that maybe a service is taken away, or maybe one needs to be added and they can't get it added to their individualized plan for employment, which is an IPE. So we can help those that are receiving services in those ways. There are 4 levels or 4 categories that applicants and eligible individuals are placed in. Only because VR is in order of selection, only priority categories 1 and 2 are being served. If the person is placed in 3 or 4, they will be on a waiting list. And so they may want our help in moving up a category or 2. And so we will work with them after reviewing their file to see what we can do to help them. And so individuals that are eligible for the IL services, we can assist. And now that they're doing transition, we can help transition students. And a lot of times, even with VR, they have pre-ETS or what we call pre-employment transition services that VR provides to students between the ages of 14 and 24, I believe. And if they're having trouble finding those services at their schools or who their counselor would be in that area, who they would need to talk to, we can assist and connect them together and see if there's any problems, if there is one, to resolve that. Okay. Our most frequently addressed issues are conflicts regarding services to be provided, communication issues between the individual and the service provider, whether that's VR or the independent living program, and issues related to the individualized plan for employment or IPE development or implementation. So this gets into some of the examples I already gave. If they are in conflict about an employment goal, maybe the counselor has some documentation that's been provided through an evaluation of some type, that they have concerns that a person might not be able to do a particular job, and those sorts of things, we can come in and kind of help. We will be there for the individual and try to find some mutual ground that they can both agree on. Maybe there is a service the individual thinks they should have, like they want to go to college, but what if the job they want doesn't require a college degree? So we kind of have to explain to them that's not going to happen. Sometimes an advanced degree is necessary, and we have to advocate for them to get that degree, or else they cannot achieve their employment goal. It varies. Sometimes there are communication issues, and that happened a lot more in the past. VR is taking steps to resolve that. So we don't see them as much. It still comes up from time to time, but we do hear from clients that say, my counselor won't call me back. So we have to establish that connection again and get that moving. And we do all of this in a very mutual, positive, working together atmosphere, because the individual and the counselors or the service providers continue to work together after we have helped resolve the issue and we have left. We want them to work together. We don't want to create any hostility. Okay, so now we're going to go to life of the case. There's an image on this page that is a swirling blue line with dots along the line and letters of the alphabet. It's just showing that there are steps that we go through while working a case. So the life of the case, in a brief synopsis, is the individual feels they need an advocate. They will call our intake line or send us an email to our intake department, and they will, intake will call them, an advocate from there will call them, talk to them, find out all the details. They will send it in to the review team for review. If that case is opened, it will be assigned to an advocate who then reviews all the information and then calls the client to find out any missing information that wasn't able to be noted before and get that and fill it out. Plus, we hear the story and we ask them questions to gather more information. If we decide that this is a case that we can assist with, we send them our advocacy service agreement and release of information form, along with some other forms like the grievance form if they need to fill that out later down the line or even now. We also send a media release form, things of that nature. So the individuals sign and send them back. We take the release form and send a request form to the VR counselor or over to the Center for Independent Living if that's where we're going, and request records. We get those records back, and while we're doing that, we also call the counselor and we talk to them and get their perspective on what's going on in the case as well. We do this after we get the signed release back from the individual, and they can have that so they know they can talk with us, because that's what that release form allows, plus it allows them to release the records to us. We review that file and we go back to our client and we talk to them, ask additional questions if we need to, and then we develop a plan to move forward, whether that's through appeals, whether that is through a meeting, maybe we just need to submit some documentation. But we tell them what we know about the VR policies, about the federal regulations, and do our best to help them. And we go from there. On the next slide, I'm going to talk about a client story. There is someone that we helped, and I want to direct your attention to the image on the screen. That is a white man with a mustache wearing a tan hat with his mask pulled below his chin, holding out his hand in front of a UTV, as another white man with facial hair and a hat hands him the keys to the UTV. This was the success image for this individual. He is a farmer. The one receiving the keys is a farmer. His name is Dennis, and he has a mobility disability. He doesn't use a wheelchair, but he's having trouble maneuvering, walking his farm. It's got some rough terrain in places, and he's having a hard time walking all over that farm and doing the things he needs to do. He needs to get to the fences to mend them at times. Sometimes his cattle gets into places that he cannot get to, and he needed something to help him go all over this farm and help him do what he needed to do. Tennessee Agribility assessed him for what he needed based on his disability to continue farming his cattle, raising his cattle. They determined he needed a UTV. The individual went to VR to get to request this assistive technology to help him so he could retain his employment of farming. At first, they said, we do not buy vehicles, and they denied it. So Tennessee Agribility had Dennis reach out to us for help with some advocacy. We read up on all of this, and we saw that, well, if they're saying they don't buy vehicles, which we well knew, but we said a UTV is not a vehicle. However, since that's the way they said it, we will educate them that it is not a vehicle, that it is not a vehicle you get on the road and drive down and go to the store and do everything you need to do. This is to get around on the rough terrain of this farm. It also gives this individual, or Dennis, a place to put all the equipment that he needs to carry with him to either mend a fence or help a cow when they're in birthing season or whatever's going on with them if they get injured. So VR looked at this again. We made the exception request. They did look at it. It was approved. They saw the reasoning, and they said, yes, we can do this. It took a lot of approvals. We had to wait. A lot of time was waiting and communicating back and forth, trying to get all these approvals done, but it was finally done. And then we had to work through a procedure because these UTVs don't stay on the lot forever. They are gone, usually within a day of coming to the dealership. They're in high demand. So we worked that quirk out, and I give kudos a lot to Tennessee Agribility in this as well, because they worked hard as much as we did. We had our own roles to play, and VR counselor worked hard. And we all came together and this was done. And this image is our success of helping this person. They sent me this picture and they told me that if it hadn't been for you, Dennis would have had to quit farming. And they thanked us. So that's my story. And I'm going to turn it back over to Becky so she can share a client story with you.
Thank you, Tricia. That's a great story. Being a farm girl, I can appreciate that. The other images that you see portrayed on the screen today are other individuals who have received services through CAP, and as a result of that, were able to receive the services that they also needed through vocational rehabilitation. On the uppermost left corner is a Black woman who had hearing loss and needed hearing aids and had difficulties with that, and we were able to assist with that. The individual in the middle is a firefighter who was also assisted through our client assistance program. The story I'm going to share with you is one that actually dates back a little bit further, a couple of years ago, but this is an individual that we worked with for quite a while, and it was a multiple team member effort to get this one through and help him to achieve success in working with VR. This was an individual who experiences mental illness. He contacted us after VR informed him that they could not approve his goal to attain a graduate degree in his chosen field. VRs kept telling him that he just did not have the required background and work experience to become employed in this field after he completed that graduate degree. VR stated that they were using their policy to guide them in doing this. So once he was denied that, he came to DRT requesting help to figure out how to work through this, and he wanted to request an informal administrative review, which, as Tricia mentioned, is one of the levels of services that we can provide. So we reviewed information with him, looked at all the information he had gathered, all the supporting documentation, reviewed VR records and all those kinds of things, and helped the client develop information. He wanted to advocate for himself during the administrative review. He did not want our agency doing that for him. He wanted to do it. So we assisted him in building a PowerPoint presentation that he did himself and pulled everything together to explain his background, his experience. Even though his undergraduate degree did not match with the master's degree, he explained how he would make that work, and that having the graduate degree would provide him the background that he needed. This was all, and for all this information was presented to VR through the informal administrative review process. And it came back saying that they still upheld their prior decision, that they would not support him to attend a graduate degree program because he did not currently have the requisite skills to be able to function as a manager. He didn't have enough years of experience. So he wanted to then pursue a fair hearing. So at that point, it goes from being an advocate working with him to our attorney, Nathan, working with him. So again, we went through the same processes, reviewing information, and it went to the fair hearing process. The same information that was presented pretty much during the informal administrative review was presented during the fair hearing to a fair hearing officer. And that fair hearing officer works through the Department of Human Services for the state. So in the fair hearing process, it's a very formal process. You have the attorneys present for the VR program, and you have the attorney present on the other side, as well as the individual to share their story, and then there can be witnesses from both sides. So it's a very formal process. During that fair hearing, the same information that was presented, as I said, during the administrative review was presented again. And one thing I didn't mention before is that information included supporting documents from the program director of the graduate program explaining how the individual's background, and with having the graduate program, he would be prepared to obtain employment in his field, as well as from a recruiter from a national level agency that recruits individuals for positions such as he was pursuing, had also indicated that having that graduate degree would make all the difference for him. The fair hearing officer, reviewing all the information, hearing all the witnesses and everyone share things, came back with the report that he felt that the VR decision had been improper, and that he felt that VR had not really taken all of the evidence under consideration when making their decision. So subsequently, our client was able to get back to work with VR. They sat down, reviewed information, and developed a plan, implemented his individualized plan for employment, and he pursued that graduate degree. The last we heard from him, he was in his third semester of the program, and he said it was quite challenging, but he was very excited about the job prospects for him upon completion of the program. So those are always great ones. And that was an unusual one. We don't do very many fair hearings, so we wanted to share that one with you today. It's something that's a little different than what we're usually able to do. At this point, we're going to go ahead and turn things over to Nathan to share information about protection and advocacy for beneficiaries of Social Security. Nathan, you're on mute.
Thank you so much, Becky. I was just saying that I'm Nathan, and the pronouns I use are he and his. I have brown hair and brown eyes, and I'm wearing a blue-gray flannel shirt. And right now, I'm presenting from my home office. I am here today to tell you about our other employment program here at Disability Rights Tennessee, and that it's another acronym. It's our PABSS program. This stands for Protection and Advocacy for Beneficiaries of Social Security. Slide, please. So before I go into the details of the program, I just wanted to share a little history and implementation of PABSS. The Ticket to Work and Work Incentives Improvement Act of 1999 authorized the Social Security Administration to award grants to the designated protection and advocacy system. So that's Disability Rights Tennessee, we're one of the 57 members of that P&A system. Services provided to disabled beneficiaries may include information and advice about obtaining vocational rehabilitation and employment services, and advocacy or other services that an individual may need to secure or regain gainful employment. Next slide. So that's where we come in. Our PABSS program, we help SSI or SSDI recipients who are facing barriers to work. So that phrase, barriers to work, is kind of the brief phrase we use to describe the wide variety of help we can provide under this program. The one major limit to this program is that since it is funded by the Social Security Administration, the major limitation is you have to be receiving SSI or SSDI for your disability in order to be eligible. If you are, we can help you resolve barriers to work, but we can't help you get on SSI or SSDI with this funding. But if you do qualify as a beneficiary with a disability, we can help with a wide variety of barriers to work, So this second bullet point here lists some of the more common ones we help with. So for examples, we can help you get an effective transition plan with your high school. We can help you get accommodations for your disability for your college classes or other post-secondary training program. We can help you get reasonable accommodations in your workplace to help you do your job. And we can resolve employment discrimination issues. So as you can see by these major examples, we can help people all the way from when they are in their teens, thinking about that transition plan post-graduation from high school, all the way to retirement age, and help with any sort of issues you encounter in your job along the way. So this list isn't exclusive. Basically, if it's a barrier to work, we can assist with, we can get involved. So to give some other examples, let's say you have a service animal and you need to take Lyft or Uber to work. Maybe your driver doesn't want a service animal in the car. Since that would be transportation to work, that would be an issue we can help with. We could also help you if you had an issue with accessible parking at your workplace, or even accessible parking at your apartment complex if you needed that to be able to use that parking space to get effectively to and from work. To just give one other example, and again, even these aren't exclusive, we've helped an individual figure out how to get criminal records expunged if there was a criminal record. There was a criminal record that was preventing that individual from getting a specific job. So since that is the issue that was preventing employment, we were able to step in and provide assistance. Next slide, please. So yeah, just a little bit more about PABSS here. And there is a photo on this slide that shows someone walking on a sidewalk with their service animal. So basically you just see the service dog. And maybe before this year, I would have thought the individual was dressed too casually for work. It looks like they're wearing sweatpants and sneakers. But everything's changed so much in the last couple of years with COVID that they're probably looking pretty sharp at the office, I would imagine. So I just wanted to share some best practices for getting assistance from the PABSS program. Really, it's one tip I try to drive home as much as possible during every presentation. And that's if you are encountering any sort of workplace barrier that you want help with, it's always great to call us as soon as possible and get that assistance as soon as you can. And for two reasons. First, just as a practical matter, it's always good to get the process started before things get really bad. Especially like if you're having an issue at work, you do not want to wait until you're in trouble and you're getting fired and your employer is building a case against you. It's often, if you do get someone involved before then, you can stem that off. So I really recommend calling us as soon as you can. And the other reason is, like the CAP program, we do always try to solve things at the lowest possible level with the PABSS program. So the first step, if it's an employer, for example, would be just calling that employer, getting their side of the story and trying to negotiate the issue, or just provide legal advice and tips and strategies for working with the client. But sometimes things don't work out as well as we want them to on the lower level. So we do have to go ahead and file a legal complaint or something like that. And sometimes the timelines where you're able to do these are pretty short, especially in Tennessee. So we call them statutes of limitations. If there's any lawyers on this call, but it can be as little as 45 days, depending on the issue. So I know federal employees, they only have 45 days in order to get assistance about a legal issue at work. One of the more common ones we see is 180 days for employees in Tennessee. If you're needing reasonable accommodations, that would be your statute of limitation. And other ones can be 300 days. So those are the three more common ones. But a lot of times we hear from individuals after a year or more. So a year would be past all of those time limits. It would be even past the 300-day time limit. So that does make it a lot harder for us to help. And just to be completely honest, even if the employer is willing to resolve things on a lower level, sometimes it is that threat of, they know that you could file a complaint if you wanted to, that might be what's spurring them on to provide assistance. So if they know that your statute of limitation has passed, they might be less willing to negotiate and reach a consensus. So with that, I guess I'm just going to share a couple success stories from the PABSS program. I want to do this mainly because I know I'm saying, barriers to work, it can be anything. So sometimes it's hard to wrap your head around what exactly a barrier to work means in practice. So I just pulled a couple of my favorite stories from our last fiscal year that ended at the end of September. So I'll just go ahead. The first story, it was a beneficiary with deafness. And she needed some help getting accommodations at work. She already had a job. She was hired as a hairdresser. But she was having some trouble communicating with her employers that she needed extra accommodations. And she didn't need accommodations to do her job on a day-to-day basis. She had everything worked out, how she would interact with the clients that she was serving and cut their hair. But because of her deafness, she was struggling on those rare occasions when her employer was providing training or having a salon-wide meeting. She wasn't able to understand what was going on because of everyone, things like that. Everyone's talking at once, or the information's happening really fast, could be coming from a screen or a PowerPoint, something like that. So she was requesting sign language interpreters to come in just for those meetings and trainings, and for those sign language interpreters to be provided by her employer. So this is actually a pretty common issue we see at Disability Rights Tennessee, where the employer will assume a lot of times with people with deafness that just because you can do your job on a day-to-day basis without a lot of accommodations and without a sign language interpreter, they assume you'll never need one. So they'll say, you don't need that, you're doing fine. So we don't need to provide this. And it can be really frustrating then for an employee to have to be going to trainings or going to important meetings and getting instructions and not being able to understand the details. So we were able to step in this instance and educate the employer about this issue and about the American Disability Act's guidance on it. And we got the employer to agree that this was something they needed to provide in these circumstances. So it ended up being a good outcome for our client. And we also hope it's a good outcome systemically, since it wasn't just a single hair salon, it was a chain throughout the state of Tennessee. So we did provide information on how to hire interpreters throughout the state. So now, we expect that this employer will know their responsibilities for their deaf employees statewide. And I think we are running short on time, so I'm going to try. I have two here. I'm going to try to pick my favorite. Let's see. Okay, so this is an individual with a developmental disability. a young man, and he called me because he was dealing with basically, I think, a lot of frustration and fear at work. He felt like because he had a disability, his job position wasn't stable. So he felt kind of nervous just on a day-to-day basis. He was going home and worrying about what happened over the course of the workday. You know, did he do something wrong? Was he going to get fired? So this, it's an interesting story because it wasn't sort of a major issue. Like there wasn't anything really discriminatory going on that he could point to. But, you know, because we can help with any barrier to work, we're able to get involved early and just sit down with the employee and the employer. And we were just able to, you know, explain the situation. And we were able to advocate for some additional accommodations, such as more communication and instruction. So extra communication and instruction that would be provided to this client. So he was able to feel more confident and be able to do that job more effectively. And it's funny, in the state of Tennessee, you know, there's really no such thing as super hardcore job security. You can be fired for at any time as long as the reason isn't discriminatory. So we were able to sit down with the employee and sort of explain that, you know, we couldn't give him any guarantees like you're going to have this job forever, because that's just not the sort of positions that exist. But we were able to explain that your job's just as permanent as any of your coworkers. It's not you know, just a temporary job that you're just here to fill a gap because you have a disability, and then they're going to get rid of you when they can. We were able to explain that the employer really cared about them and cared about them being happy in the workplace and doing that job effectively too. So it ended up being a good case outcome, and that can be a really cool role of the PABSS program, is to sort of help people deal with issues before they become big issues and terminations. This is another common one where sometimes we help people with mental health diagnoses, where they might think there's something really not great going on at the job, and sometimes when we get involved, it just turns out to be communication styles with their boss, or maybe just a complete miscommunication. So it's always really good to kind of clear the air if you can, and we're always happy just to talk to you and help you decide if this is something you want to bring up at this time, that you want Disability Rights Tennessee getting involved. Just because you're calling us doesn't commit you to anything. You know, we work with you and help